The morning sun filters through the trees, casting soft shadows on the quiet streets of our neighborhood. It is the start of another day, and everything feels just a little bit different than it did yesterday. I woke up feeling like I was still caught in the dream from last night. It was just a kiss, but it felt like it changed the entire world around me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So, did last night really happen? It felt so real, yet so impossible. I sat there on my bed, trying to make sense of everything, but my mind was just a blur of confusion and hope. I stared at my phone, waiting for a message that I wasn't even sure I wanted to receive. The silence in the room was deafening, and every second felt like an hour passing by. Then, a notification popped up. A new photo from May. My heart skipped a beat as I tapped the screen, wondering what I was about to see. It was a group photo from last night. There I was, smiling, looking like I didn't have a care in the world. But looking at that picture, I knew things were about to get complicated. I stepped into the shower, hoping the water would wash away the lingering thoughts of last night. But the more I tried to forget, the more vivid the memory became. It was just a kiss, I told myself. Nothing more, nothing less. But as I looked in the mirror, I couldn't help but smile. Maybe it was more than just a simple kiss. I went to the kitchen to make some coffee, hoping the caffeine would help me focus. But my mind was still stuck on the events of the previous night. Haru walked in, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. The air felt heavy with the things we hadn't said yet, but we both pretended everything was normal. "Good morning," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me, and for a second, I thought he might say something about last night, but he just nodded. "Good morning," he replied. His voice was soft, and he looked away quickly. We both knew we were avoiding the elephant in the room, but neither of us was ready to confront it. We sat down to eat in silence. The sound of our chopsticks hitting the bowls was the only thing filling the room. It was a comfortable silence, but it was also filled with unspoken questions. "So, about last night," I started, but I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't know how to ask what I wanted to know without making things even more awkward than they already were. "Forget about last night," Rin said firmly. "We were drunk, and when people drink, they do things they wouldn't normally do. It's better if we just move on." "I see," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "You're right. I'll tell myself that's all it was. I'll try to forget, just like you said." I looked at my reflection in the mirror, trying to convince myself that I was okay. But deep down, I knew that forgetting wasn't going to be as easy as he made it sound. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. I needed to get out of the house, to be around other people, to distract myself from the thoughts that were consuming me. "I'm heading out," I called out to Ren. He didn't look up from his coffee, but he gave a small nod. I closed the door behind me, feeling a strange sense of relief. I watched him leave, and for a moment, I felt a pang of regret. Maybe I shouldn't have been so cold, but I didn't know how else to protect myself from the feelings that were starting to surface. The campus was bustling with students, all of them going about their day as if nothing had changed. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil I was feeling inside. I walked through the campus, trying to focus on my classes. But every face I saw reminded me of the people I had been with last night, and the memories kept flooding back. "Morning, Haru," May called out, waving at me. I forced a smile, trying to act like everything was normal. She looked so happy, and I didn't want to ruin her mood. "Oh, hey May," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "You scared me for a second." She laughed, and for a moment, I felt like I could actually get through the day. "You look tired, Haru," she said, her expression turning serious. I shrugged, trying to downplay it. "I just didn't sleep well," I lied, hoping she wouldn't press further. "I'm fine, really," I said, forcing another smile. She looked at me for a moment, as if she could see right through my lie, but then she just nodded. The clock tower chimed, signaling the start of the next class. I needed to get going, so I said goodbye to May and headed towards the lecture hall. I sat in the back of the lecture hall, trying to pay attention to the professor. But my mind was wandering, and I couldn't help but think about Ren and what he had said earlier. The professor called my name, and I jumped. I hadn't been listening, and now everyone was looking at me. I felt my face turn red as I tried to come up with an answer. Kai, who was sitting next to me, nudged me and handed me his notebook. He had been taking notes, and he was trying to help me out. I was so grateful for his kindness. I looked at the notes and tried to summarize the theory the professor had just explained. It was a bit of a struggle, but I managed to get through it, and the professor seemed satisfied. After class, Kai and I walked down the hallway together. He was a good friend, and I was glad to have him around. We talked about the lecture and the upcoming project. "You really saved me back there," I said, laughing. Kai just smiled and said he knew I'd need his notes eventually. He was right, of course, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. We decided to work together on the project, and we shook hands to seal the deal. I was looking forward to it, and I hoped it would be a good distraction from everything else. Kai showed me his camera, and we talked about photography for a while. It was nice to talk about something other than school, and I felt a little bit better. I saw Haru and Kai talking, and for a moment, I felt a twinge of jealousy. But I quickly pushed it aside. I had no right to feel that way, and I needed to focus on my own life. We sat on a bench and looked at the photos Kai had taken. We were laughing and having a good time, and for a moment, I forgot about everything that had been bothering me. I sat on a bench nearby, trying to look busy with my phone. But I couldn't help but watch them. They looked so happy, and I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever be that happy again. Kai looked at me, and for a second, I thought he was going to say something about Run. But he just smiled and asked if I was okay. I told him I was, and I hoped it was the truth. The sun was starting to set, and the campus was bathed in a warm, golden light. It was a beautiful sight, and it made me feel a little bit more at peace. I sat on the bench, watching the students walk by. I was thinking about everything that had happened today, and I couldn't help but feel like things were finally starting to make sense. May walked up to me and asked what I was thinking about. I told her I was just thinking about everything, and she smiled and said she understood. "You've been spacing out all day, Haru," she said, her voice soft. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled and told her I was just tired. "Don't tell me you fell in love," she teased, her eyes twinkling. I laughed and told her not to be ridiculous, but I knew she was onto something. I looked at her, and for a moment, I felt like I could tell her everything. But I wasn't ready yet, so I just smiled and told her it was nothing. "I see," she said, her expression softening. She didn't press further, and I was grateful for that. We just sat there for a while, enjoying the quiet of the evening. Kai joined us, and we talked for a while longer. It was nice to be with my friends, and I felt like I could finally breathe again. I watched them from afar, and for a moment, I felt a sense of peace. They were my friends, and I was happy for them. I was finally starting to accept things as they were. I looked at the photos on my phone, and I realized that I was finally ready to move on. I was ready to let go of the past and start fresh. The sun had set, and the campus was now bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. It was a beautiful night, and I felt like anything was possible. I walked home, feeling a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in a long time. Everything was going to be okay, I told myself, and for the first time, I actually believed it. May took my hand, and we walked together in silence. It was a comfortable silence, and I felt like we were finally on the same page. We walked up the stairs, and I felt a sense of anticipation. I didn't know what was waiting for us at the top, but I was ready to find out. We reached the rooftop, and the view was breathtaking. The city was spread out before us, and I felt like I could see everything from up here. May asked me what was going on, and I told her I was just thinking about everything. She smiled and said she understood, and I felt a sense of relief. I told her nothing, but she didn't believe me. She knew me too well, and I couldn't hide anything from her. I was just trying to process everything, I said, and she nodded. You've been weird all day, she said, her voice soft. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled and told her it was nothing. I told her I was just imagining things, and she laughed. She knew I was lying, but she didn't press further, and I was grateful for that. That laugh, she said, her expression serious. It's the most suspicious laugh I've ever heard. I laughed again, and this time, it felt a little bit more genuine. We talked for a while longer, and I felt like I could finally be myself around her. It was a good feeling, and I hoped it would last. You noticed all that? I asked, surprised. She smiled and said of course she did, she was my best friend. I felt a sense of warmth in my chest. Actually, I started, but I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't know how to tell her about Run, but I knew I had to be honest with her. On the way home on Friday night, Ren and we kissed, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I felt a sense of relief as the words finally came out. What? She asked, her expression one of shock. I repeated what I had said, and she looked at me as if she couldn't believe it. We kissed, I said again, my voice a little stronger this time. She looked at me for a moment, as if she was trying to process everything, and then she smiled. Wait, seriously? She asked, her voice filled with excitement. I nodded, and she looked at me as if she was about to burst with joy. When? She asked, her voice soft. I told her it was on Friday night, on the way home. She looked at me, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. On Friday night, on the way home, I said again. She looked at me, and I could see the excitement in her eyes. Twice, I added, and she looked at me in disbelief. Twice? She asked, her voice filled with disbelief. I nodded, and she looked at me as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Haru, that's basically the start of a relationship, she said, her voice filled with excitement. I looked at her, and I couldn't help but smile. He said we were just drunk, I said, my voice soft. That it didn't mean anything. She looked at me, and I could see the sadness in her eyes. And you just accepted that? She asked, her voice filled with disbelief. I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged and looked away. What else was I supposed to do? I asked, my voice soft. She looked at me, and I could see the concern in her eyes. Haru, are you already falling for him? She asked, her voice soft. I didn't know what to say, so I just looked at her and smiled. I walked home, feeling like everything was finally starting to make sense. I didn't know what the future held, but I was ready to find out. Thanks for watching.